My dad humiliated me at his retirement party, so now I took back everything, unmasked his betrayal, and destroyed the lies. At my dad's retirement barbecue, I gave him a Rolex engraved with, "Thank you for everything." He looked at me and said, "Do you think money can buy love? You will always be last." I smiled, took the gift, and walked away. His face turned pale. My mom yelled, "Come back!" That morning my phone exploded with 71 missed calls from my parents to return everything, and then they screamed when they found out what I did next. My father was not cruel. He just operated as if emotions were liabilities. Growing up, he was the kind of guy who would congratulate you on your report card without looking up from the television. I can count on one hand the number of times he said anything close to, "I am proud of you," and even then it was usually followed by some kind of correction. He believed in work, in silence, and getting things done without making a show. Love was never part of the package. So when his retirement party came around, I thought naively that this might be a turning point. He had worked at the same accounting firm for 38 years, never taken more than 2 weeks off, and retired with a ceremony that felt more like a funeral. I planned the barbecue myself, my house, my money, my setup. I had it catered, brought in one of those outdoor bar wagons with a mixologist, and even rented a tent because the forecast said light rain. Everyone showed up, family, some old co-workers, neighbors. My sister Laura flew in from Denver for the weekend and tried to play peacekeeper the whole time. My mom fluttered around like she always does, trying to make sure everything looked perfect, even though she had zero part in organizing it. Everyone kept thanking her like she had planned the whole thing. Whatever. That was not the point. The point was the watch. I had been saving for it for a while, even though I could easily afford it now. A Rolex Submariner, with a black dial, classic. It had 4 words engraved on it, "Thank you for everything." I did not want it to be dramatic, just a clean gesture, closure, maybe a beginning. So I waited until the food died down, until people started sipping wine and bourbon, and laughing at old stories that were only half true. I pulled him aside near the edge of the yard, away from everyone. I handed him the box. He opened it, looked down, and then looked at me. No smile, no nod, just that cold stare. Then he said it, "You think money can buy love? You will always be the last." That is all he said, as if it were a fact, like I was some stranger trying to buy his attention in a pawn shop. I did not answer. I just reached forward, took the box back, and turned around. I walked across the yard without saying goodbye to anyone. I did not even hear my mom scream at first, not until I had already unlocked my car. The next morning, I woke up to 71 missed phone calls, 17 voicemails. My mom's voice filled the first few, demanding that I give back the watch, the lunch money, everything. My dad's voice was at the end, talking about how ungrateful I was, that I had embarrassed him in front of people, that I tried to make a fool of him, that I was always trying to be a hero with my money. I did not call him back, not that day, not after what I did next. Monday started the way most of my Mondays do, coffee, laptop open, pretending to answer emails while the weight of the weekend's events hovered over me like a second ceiling. I was not planning on doing anything important that day. I thought I would just ignore the calls, let them scream into the void. But then one voicemail changed all that. It was my dad's voice, calm, like he always is when he is about to get nasty. He said, "You embarrassed me in front of people who really matter. If you think you can just throw money around and rewrite who you are in this family, you are more lost than I thought." That was the tipping point. I logged into the separate bank account I had set up for her years ago, back when I was trying to earn my place. I'd been quietly paying her mortgage ever since. It started as a 6-month favor during a rough patch, then somehow became permanent. They stopped asking how it was paid. They stopped pretending to be grateful. What they did not know was that I kept everything in my name. I was the only one in full control. I built up a buffer over the years, adding little by little until there was enough to cover almost 1 year's worth of payments if anything went sideways. That morning, I pulled it all out. $46,000 transferred to my personal account in one fell swoop. Then I called the mortgage company, told them I was no longer responsible for the payments. Let the original borrowers figure it out. The guy on the phone asked if I was sure. I was. By late afternoon, my mom had found out. She started texting. The tone changed quickly. First confusion, then anger, then something I had not heard from her in a long time, fear. The house. One message said, "You were not really going to let them take the house." I did not answer. I went for a walk. When I came back, there were 3 voicemails from my uncle, one from Laura, and a new email from my dad titled, "We need to talk." The next day, at 8 o'clock in the morning, someone buzzed at my apartment. I did not answer. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. I checked the peephole. It was my mother. I let her stand there, watched her knock, call my name, then just wait. For 25 minutes. She left a note by the door. I tossed it without reading it. Around 9 o'clock in the evening that same night, there was another knock. 2 short knocks. I thought it might be her again. Maybe Laura this time. It was not. The guy outside looked like someone who used to work security at a strip mall. Black jacket, gray pants, the kind of face you forget until he is in your hallway asking questions. He did not introduce himself. He just stared for a second and said, "Your dad sends his regards." Then he walked away. No threats, just a message. The next morning, I noticed that my lock had fresh marks on it, like someone had tried to pick it, but was not in a hurry. My neighbor, Tom, an older guy, kind of nosy, told me he saw someone asking what time I usually get home. He said the guy was not friendly. I filed a police report that afternoon. I listed the whole thing, the visit, the damage to the lock, the assault, but I added one thing at the end that changed everything. I told the officer the name of the man I had seen. It was not a guess. I recognized him from my father's retirement party. He was not a stranger. He was one of those old TO workers that everyone thought had just shown up to wish him well. He had been drinking whiskey and barely said a word. It turns out his name was not on any guest list. The moment I got confirmation from the officer that the man knocking on my door was not just some drunk trying his luck, everything changed. He was a licensed private investigator until a few years ago, now working in the gray area, mostly hired by people who did not want questions asked. The officer would not say it outright, but the tone was clear. He had seen this type of guy used before by people trying to scare the family into submission. The implication: my father had paid him to rattle me, to dig around in my life, and maybe worse. But the part that lit the fuse: he had already visited my ex, Olivia. I had not spoken to her in over 1 year. Things had ended cleanly, no bad blood. She texted me around midnight, right after the police left. She said some guy, claiming to be handling a family matter, showed up at her office and asked if she knew anything about my finances. He asked about my mental health, if I had ever talked about hurting anyone, if I had ever hinted at doing anything reckless with money. At first, she thought he was a debt collector until he mentioned my father's full name. That is when everything came into focus. My dad was not just angry, he was planning something. Maybe not a lawsuit, but something more sinister: character assassination, third-party gaslighting, making me look unstable, unpredictable, dangerous, the kind of man you should not trust with money or secrets or even my own freedom. And the best part? He underestimated how much I knew. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I opened the one file I had kept buried for years, a digital folder called Contingency. It started as a joke, really, just a collection of screenshots and documents that, if ever needed, could serve as insurance. Things like emails between my dad and his old business partner about tax write-offs that were not exactly clean. Scans of a couple of checks my mom deposited into her personal account from funds that were never supposed to touch her name. Nothing illegal, not directly, but sketchy enough to sink her socially, financially, maybe even legally. And then there was the trust. My grandfather had left Laura and me a substantial trust fund. The clause was specific. It would be split 50-50 when we turned 30, unless one of us was demonstrably unfit to manage the funds. What no one knew, not even Laura, was that after our grandfather died, I was named temporary trustee. Temporary power was to be transferred to a third party if necessary, but nobody ever changed it. I was still in charge. I never touched it. I did not need to. But when I started going through the statements, I noticed something was wrong. Laura's half should be intact, just sitting there. But it was not. Nearly $120,000 had been moved over a 3-year period. Not outright, but disguised. Transfers labeled administrative expenses. Invoices from companies that did not exist, even a few donations to charities with suspiciously blank websites. The shell work was sloppy. It took me 2 hours to figure out exactly where the money was going. Every single trail led back to my parents. They had been siphoning off Laura's inheritance to support their lifestyle, mortgage, car upgrades, even a failed investment in a real estate flip that went sideways in 2020. They did not just steal from me, they stole from their daughter, the one who still answered the phone when they called. I put it all together, clean, easy to read, with backups, screenshots, transaction logs, and dates. I sent it all to Laura. She called in less than 20 minutes. I picked up, expecting tears or denial. Instead, she was silent for a long time. When she did speak, her voice was cold. "You stole from me." "Yes. And they tried to ruin you." "Looks like it." "Then let us burn it down." I told her I would take care of the rest, but I was not prepared for what she did next. The next morning she flew in without telling anyone. She showed up at my apartment with a duffel bag and a folder full of her own receipts. It turned out she had been collecting things too. She just did not think she would ever use them. Things like our mom's texts, asking her to lie to a bank teller. Our dad's emails about how he might need access to her accounts while she was in school. That same day, I sent a copy of the entire file to my parents' accountant. Not to threaten, but to warn, because what was next? It was not going to be quiet. I did not hear from my parents for 2 days after I sent the file to their accountant. Not a text, not a phone call, nothing. I imagined their reactions 100 different ways: denial, panic, anger. But nothing prepared me for what actually happened. The third morning I got an email, not from them, but from their lawyer. It was short, just 2 lines. My clients request an immediate cease and desist. Any further distribution of private financial information will be considered a criminal offense. This is your only warning. No signature, no official headline, nothing about trying to talk it out. Just a legal threat, thinly veiled and hastily written. It was the first sign that they were losing control. I forwarded it to Laura. She did not respond with words, just a photo. It was the outside of our parents' house, taken from the street, with a big red sign staked into the lawn, foreclosure notice, dated that morning. They thought I was bluffing. The mortgage company had moved faster than I thought. My guess, they were in default before I even withdrew my money. My funds had bought them time, and when that stopped, the clock ran out. No savings to keep them afloat, no backup plan. The house they used to lecture me from? Gone. But what really broke me down was what happened that same afternoon. Laura went to the house. She did not tell me until after, probably because she knew I would have tried to stop her. She knocked. Mom answered. She says our mom stood there in total silence for almost a full minute, like she could not decide whether to hug her or slap her. Then our dad appeared behind her and did not say anything, just stared at her like she was a ghost. Finally, he spoke. "You are as broken as he is." Laura told me later that she did not flinch. She handed him a copy of the trust records, pointed to the bottom line, and asked the question, "How do you think this ends?" She said. My father's face went blank, as if someone had flipped a switch. And then, unexpectedly, he sat down. He did not yell, did not argue, just sat there and started muttering about how he built everything from nothing, how he did not understand pressure, how we were spoiled and ungrateful. That should have been the end of it. But later that night, someone broke into my car. They did not steal anything, not the sunglasses in the glove compartment, not the laptop I stupidly left in the back seat. Instead, they left something. It was an envelope. Inside was a single photograph, me, taken from across the street leaving my apartment 2 days earlier. On the back, in handwriting I did not recognize, were 3 words, "You went too far." I called Laura. I told her I was going out of town for a few days, laying low. She did not even hesitate. She said she would do the same. We both knew what it meant. It was not just about money anymore, or respect, or revenge. It had become something else. And whatever my parents were planning now, it would not be legal. I left town that night, packed a bag, turned off my phone, and drove north. I did not tell anyone where. Laura and I agreed to disappear for a few days, let things cool off, or at least give them enough quiet to get nervous. When your enemies do not know what you are doing, they start making mistakes. I came back 3 days later. My apartment had not been touched. The building's security camera showed that no one had been near my door since I left, but that did not reassure me. I knew my father. This was not going to be loud. He would try to cut me down quietly, surgically, ruin my life in pieces. So, I moved first. Remember the trust fund? What my parents did not know was that I had already talked to a lawyer, one who specialized in financial crimes and embezzlement. Laura and I signed everything together. The moment she saw the money was gone, she gave me her full permission to act. Within 48 hours, the attorney filed an official complaint with the state. We submitted full documentation, forgeries, unauthorized transactions, fake invoice trails, even signatures my mother tried to forge. Laura had a forensic handwriting expert confirm it. It was all airtight. But that was not the best part. The house was already in foreclosure, but they had not moved out yet. They thought they had time to stall the bank. So I pulled the final string. I called the homeowners association president in their neighborhood. I pretended to be a prospective buyer looking into neighborhood reputation concerns. Then, I casually mentioned some strange financial activity involving a property on their street, and hinted at a possible investigation. I did not name names, I just planted the idea. 2 days later, they were hit with a formal request from the Homeowners Association board. I knew they would panic. They cared more about status than anything else, more than family, more than money. To have their financial dirt leak out into the community, that would crush them. The next day, Laura called. She said our father had tried to call her twice, then left a message. He was not yelling. He begged. He said they were losing everything, that they were being humiliated, that people were whispering, that they needed help. Laura did not answer. She just sent me the voicemail. So, I took my next step. I posted the story online, anonymously at first. Nothing directly tied to us, just a detailed account of a family that misused their children's trust fund and, after public humiliation, hired a private investigator to stalk their own son. It quickly gained traction. People started commenting, speculating. Some even guessed what city it took place in. A local reporter sent me a private message asking if I wanted to talk. I said yes. And then I attached a photo, the same one that was left in my car. Me, caught leaving my apartment. I told the reporter everything. Not just the money, not just the private investigator, everything, even the threats. 2 days after the article ran, I got an email from the same lawyer who had warned me earlier. They are considering a libel suit. I wrote back one sentence. Tell them to try it. I will see them in court. The next morning, my mother called me for the first time in weeks. She did not yell. She did not threaten. She cried. She said they were being watched. She said they had lost everything. And I told her the truth. I was not done yet. After the article blew up, the silence became loud. No more private investigator visits. No more threatening envelopes. My parents disappeared from the digital world. Facebook accounts deactivated. LinkedIn scrubbed. I knew what that meant. Damage control. They were hiding. But the problem with hiding is that when people cannot find you, they start looking harder. And people were looking. The reporter followed up 3 days later. He said the story had been picked up by a national network. They wanted to do a segment on financial betrayal within families. I agreed on one condition. They had to keep the names anonymous, at least until I gave them the go-ahead. While all this was snowballing, Laura found something else, something we had overlooked. A second escrow account. This one was hidden under a shell limited liability company set up 3 years ago, tied to a business name that no one in the family had ever heard of. It was technically under my father's name, but listed Laura and me as legacy stakeholders. At first, that phrase did not mean anything until our lawyer looked into it. It turned out that the second account had been used as a siphon. My father had been taking money out of our original trust, funneling it through this sham company, and stashing it away like a private bunker. There was still $86,000 in there. We froze it. That same night, Laura texted me a line, "You should hear this." She forwarded a voice message from a burner number. It was our dad. He sounded off, slurred, almost like he had been drinking. He said something about mistakes, about how we did not understand what he was trying to protect. Then he said something that made my stomach sink. "I know you think you are winning, but I am not the only one who knows things." That stayed with me. I replayed it 10 times. Something in his voice was not just defeat, it was fear. The next morning, a woman named Dana showed up at my office. Mid-40s, sharp voice, she wore glasses too big for her face. She said she worked with my dad years ago. She said she had something I needed to see. I did not let her in the office. We went to a coffee shop down the street. She slid a flash drive across the table. He made copies of everything, she said. Bank stuff, your mother's accounts, and something else. I asked, "What?" She looked around and whispered, "Insurance policies. Old ones. The kind that pay out when someone disappears." I left the cafe without finishing my coffee. At home, I opened the files. There were scanned copies of policies from the early 2000s. One had my name, another had Laura's, the beneficiaries being my mother and father. In the notes section of one, someone had handwritten, "Untraceable if overseas." I felt the blood drain out of me. This was not just greed anymore. This was not just humiliation or revenge, or theft of inheritance. This was darker. They had plans, backup plans, contingencies. And then I remembered something. A trip they took in 2018 to Belize, supposed to be a vacation. They stayed an extra 3 weeks. No explanation, no photos, just silence. At the time, I thought they were trying to get back together. Now I was not so sure. That night, I called Laura. We were never just insurance, I said. We were the exit strategy, and she did not argue because she knew they never planned to give us anything. They were planning to leave. I could not sleep after that night. I kept thinking about that policy, about Belize, about that strange comment my father had made on the voicemail. I am not the only one who knows things. My mind went to places I did not want to go. Did they ever seriously think about it? About cashing in, pretending, starting over? I did not want to believe it, but at that point, I did not trust them to water a plant, let alone value someone's life over a payout. I met with our attorney again. We handed over the flash drive, went over the insurance documents, and began the process of legally freezing all the policies. He also pointed out something even more unexpected. The theft of trust, combined with the potential fraud and harassment, was enough to warrant full criminal charges. We did not press charges. Not yet. We gave them a deadline. It was not about money anymore. Laura and I did not need it. We wanted a clean break, no house, no apology, no vague Christmas phone calls asking for help. Just a legal, documented, irreversible end. The terms were simple. They would relinquish all access to both trust accounts. They would provide a signed affidavit admitting financial wrongdoing. They would leave the state for good. No phone calls, no emails, no threats. We gave them 7 days. On the 4th day, they agreed. No fighting, no denial, just a single email, send the papers. I did not ask why they gave in so easily. I did not want to know. But then something even stranger happened. 2 days after the signing, my dad sent a final message. Not to me, but to Laura. It was a scam letter, typed with no greeting, just one paragraph. We thought we were building something strong. We did not realize we were pouring concrete around our own feet. Tell your brother we lost the game the moment he smiled and walked away without the watch. She forwarded it to me without comment. I read it once and deleted it. I have not heard from her since. Last I checked, her house was sold below market value. The Homeowners Association fined them for disrupting the community. Their names no longer appear on any escrow documents. Their accountant dropped them. And me? I donated the Rolex. Quietly, no story, no plaque, no ego, just gone. Because in the end, it was not about proving a point, it was about cutting the cord they thought they had wrapped around my neck. And when it snapped, it was silent, permanent, just the way it had to be. Mini update, 1 year later. It has been almost 1 year since everything went down. I was not planning on doing an update, but a couple of things happened recently that made me think it was time. First, I got a letter. Not an email, but an actual handwritten letter in an envelope with no return address, postmarked from Oregon. I knew the handwriting. It was my mother's, just 2 pages. The first half was the usual guilt-ridden language about how they only did what they thought was necessary, how they never stopped loving us, even when we became strangers. I did not even finish it. But the second page was different. It said, "You think you know everything, but your father did not tell you what he did with the rest." That line stayed with me. No explanation, no context, just that. I did some checking, contacted our lawyer again, and it turns out there is a third account offshore, not in her name directly, but tied to the same shell company used in the trust siphoning. No money in it anymore, but it existed, which means there could be more. Laura and I have talked about it. For now, we are letting it go. We are not going to chase it anymore. Some things are not worth tearing apart, especially when the people behind them are already living like ghosts. I have not heard from either of them since. No birthdays, no holidays, no nothing. But I still check the mail now and then, just in case. If you followed the story all the way to the end, what do you think? Was Tom right to cut them off? Should he have gone even further or held back? And what about that last letter? Was there something more behind it? Share your thoughts in the comments. How would you have handled it?